She stole my baby. She's been lying to all of you for years. My sister Selene said it loud enough that every person at our engagement dinner stopped eating. My fiancé Daniel froze beside me while my mother pointed straight at me and said, "You don't really know who Maria is." I just sat there gripping my wine glass so hard my hand hurt. 10 days before my wedding, my own family was accusing me of secretly giving birth to Selene's 2-year-old son, and somehow half the room already believed them. Then Selene slammed a thick envelope onto the table. "DNA results," she said, "proof." I thought Daniel would defend me immediately. Instead, he picked up the envelope, stared at it for a second, and asked one question that made Selene suddenly panic. "Why does it look like this was already opened?" Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Selene's face changed instantly. Not shocked, not offended. Scared. "It doesn't matter," she snapped, reaching for the envelope too quickly. "Just read it." Daniel didn't hand it back. Around us, the private dining room had gone completely silent, except for the faint clink of silverware from the restaurant outside. 20 people were packed into that room. Our parents, Daniel's parents, cousins, friends, even my maid of honor, and every single one of them was staring at me like they were waiting for me to confess something. My mother crossed her arms and leaned back in her chair like she'd already won. "I told you she wasn't who she pretended to be," she said to Daniel's mother. That hurt more than Selene's accusation. Because my mother didn't even hesitate. Not for 1 second. Daniel slowly looked at me. "Maria, what is she talking about?" I opened my mouth but nothing came out. Not because Selene was telling the truth. Because I already knew this night could destroy every relationship in that room if the wrong thing was said out loud. Selene took my silence as victory. "She always wanted my life," she said, her voice shaking now. "She thinks because she has money and a perfect fiancé and a house that she can control everything." "That's not true," I said quietly. "Oh really?" Selene laughed bitterly. "Then explain why you paid all my hospital bills when Noah was born." A few people at the table immediately turned toward me. Daniel's father frowned. My maid of honor looked confused. And Daniel's mother slowly lowered her wine glass like she was seeing me differently for the first time. I could feel the room shifting. That was the terrifying part. Not the accusation. How fast people were willing to believe it. Selene leaned forward across the table, eyes locked on me. "Tell them why you were at the hospital every single day," she said. "Tell them why Noah looks more like you than me." I felt my stomach twist. Because there was a reason I'd been there. A real one. But if I told the truth, it wouldn't just ruin Selene. It would destroy our entire family. Daniel looked down at the envelope again. Then back at Selene. And in a much calmer voice than before, he asked, "If these results prove Maria is Noah's mother, then why are you suddenly trying so hard to stop me from opening them?" Selene pushed her chair back so fast it scraped against the floor. "I'm not trying to stop you," she said sharply. "I just want everyone to hear everything first." "No," Daniel replied, still holding the envelope. "You wanted everyone to hear your version first." That landed hard. For the first time since this started, a few people around the table looked uncertain instead of convinced. Selene noticed it too. Her eyes flicked nervously toward our mother, and Colette immediately stepped in. "Daniel, you need to understand something," she said. "Maria has always hidden things, even as a child." I almost laughed at how quickly she slipped into that tone. Calm, reasonable, protective, the same voice she used every time Selene created chaos, and somehow I ended up blamed for it. When we were teenagers, Selene crashed my car after sneaking out with friends. My mother told everyone I should have hidden my keys better. When Selene maxed out her first credit card, I paid half the debt because Mom said family takes care of family. And when Noah was born 2 years ago, I spent 3 nights sleeping in an uncomfortable hospital chair because Selene called me crying and said she couldn't do it alone. But none of that mattered in that room. Not anymore. Daniel finally looked at me directly. "Maria," he said carefully, Why did you pay the hospital bills? Before I could answer, Selene cut in. Because she had to. That's enough, Daniel snapped. The entire room went quiet again. Selene blinked like she hadn't expected him to raise his voice at her. Daniel stood slowly from his chair, still holding the envelope in one hand. You're accusing my fiancé of something huge in front of everyone we know, he said. So either we deal with facts or this conversation ends right now. For a second, I saw panic flash across Selene's face again. Real panic. Then she said something that made my chest tighten instantly. Fine, she whispered, but if he opens that, tell him who Noah's father really is. Every person at the table turned toward me, and my mother suddenly looked terrified. Nobody spoke for at least 3 full seconds. It was the kind of silence that felt physical. Daniel looked between me, Selene, and my mother like he was trying to solve a puzzle. None of us wanted him to finish. What does that mean? He asked. Selene folded her arms tightly. Ask Maria, she knows everything. I could already feel the night collapsing around me. Daniel's parents looked deeply uncomfortable now. My future mother-in-law had completely stopped eating. Across the table, one of my cousins subtly lowered her phone after realizing this wasn't turning into entertaining family drama anymore. This was something darker. Daniel kept his eyes on me. Maria. I exhaled slowly. Selene called me from the hospital the night Noah was born, I said. She was alone, she was scared, she said the father disappeared. That's a lie, Selene shot back immediately. Then why did you beg me not to tell anyone you were in labor? I asked. Selene's mouth opened, but no words came out. That tiny hesitation changed the energy in the room. Daniel noticed it too. I continued carefully. She had no insurance, no money. She was terrified social services would get involved because she'd missed appointments during the pregnancy. So yes, I paid the bills. But you never asked who the father was, Daniel's mother asked quietly. I hesitated, and that hesitation nearly destroyed me. Colette slammed her hand lightly against the table. See, there's always a secret with her. I looked at my mother in disbelief. Even now she was protecting the wrong person. Daniel frowned suddenly and looked back down at the envelope. Then he flipped it over. The seal had already been torn open. Not neatly either, desperately. He looked straight at Selene. You already read these. Selene immediately stood up. Give them to me. Why? Daniel asked. Because they're private. You didn't care about privacy 5 minutes ago. A few guests exchanged uncomfortable looks. Daniel slowly pulled the papers from the envelope. And the second Selene saw the top page, all the confidence drained from her face. Daniel scanned the first line silently. Then his expression changed completely. Not anger. Confusion. He looked up at Selene and asked quietly, Wait, what exactly did you think these results were going to say? Selene moved around the table, so fast her chair tipped backward onto the floor. Daniel, stop reading, she said. Not yelled. Begged. That was what finally made everyone understand something was seriously wrong. Daniel stepped back instinctively as Selene reached for the papers. No. My mother stood too. This isn't the place for this. I stared at her in disbelief. Now privacy mattered. Now she wanted to protect the family. Daniel looked down at the report again, scanning line after line while the room held its breath. Then he looked at me. Not suspicious anymore. Stunned. Maria, he said slowly, these results say you're not Noah's mother. A wave of confused murmurs spread across the table. Selene closed her eyes. And for the first time all night, I realized she hadn't planned for this part at all. Daniel kept reading. There's another match listed here, he said, a biological relation through the paternal side. My stomach dropped even though I already knew where this was going. I had spent 2 years terrified this secret would come out exactly like this, publicly, violently, with no way to contain the damage afterward. Colette walked toward Daniel quickly. Give me the papers. No, he said again. My mother's voice cracked. Daniel, please. That one word changed everything. Please. Not because she was worried about me. Because she was terrified of what came next. Daniel looked at Selene carefully. You knew what was in here. Selene started crying quietly. I didn't think he'd include that part. What part? Daniel asked. She looked at me helplessly. I felt exhausted suddenly, like my body had been carrying this moment for years. You should have told the truth from the beginning, I said softly. Selene shook her head over and over. You promised. I promised to protect you, I replied, not destroy myself for you. Daniel looked between us. Who is Noah's father? Nobody answered. Not me. Not Selene. Not my mother. Then Daniel unfolded the last page completely. I watched his eyes move lower across the document, and the color drained from his face. Oh my God, he whispered. Slowly, he lifted his eyes toward the far end of the table. Toward my stepfather, Victor, who had gone completely pale. Nobody moved. Victor sat frozen at the end of the table, one hand still wrapped around his untouched wine glass. His face had gone almost grey. Daniel looked back down at the paper like he wanted to make sure he hadn't read it wrong. Then he said the words nobody in that room was prepared to hear. The DNA report confirms Maria is Noah's mother. He swallowed hard. It also confirms Noah is biologically related to Victor. The room erupted instantly. What? You've got to be kidding. Oh my God. My mother grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself while several relatives started talking over each other at once. One of Daniel's cousins actually stood up and walked out of the room in shock. Selene buried her face in her hands. Victor finally spoke. This isn't what it looks like. That made something inside me snap. Then explain it, I said. Every head turned toward him. Victor looked around desperately, like he was searching for someone to save him, but for the first time in years, nobody moved to protect him, not even my mother. Selene started crying harder. He said nobody would believe me, she whispered. The room went silent again. Daniel stared at Victor with open disgust. How old was she? He asked. Victor didn't answer. Colette finally broke. He said it was a mistake, my mother said through tears. He said it ended. I looked at her in disbelief. You knew. Her eyes filled immediately. I found out after she got pregnant. And you blamed me instead. My voice shook now. You let everyone think I was some monster while you protected him. Colette couldn't even look at me. That hurt more than anything else that night. Not Selene's accusation. Not the humiliation. My own mother choosing him over me. Selene wiped her face with trembling hands. I never wanted this to happen tonight, she said, but he stopped helping me. He stopped answering my calls, and every time I saw your wedding getting closer, she looked at me weakly. I hated that your life kept moving while mine stayed ruined. I closed my eyes for a second, because despite everything, I understood exactly how broken she was. But she still tried to destroy me. Daniel stepped beside me then, not away from me. Beside me. And that was the moment I finally breathed again. She protected your family for 2 years, he said to the room, and all of you turned on her in less than 5 minutes. Nobody argued with him. Victor stood abruptly. I'm leaving. Daniel blocked him before he could reach the door. You should probably stay, he said coldly, because after tonight people are going to have questions. Within minutes the dinner was over. Guests left in stunned silence. A few apologized to me before walking out, others avoided eye contact completely. My mother tried to speak to me near the restaurant entrance, but I couldn't even listen anymore. There was nothing left to say. 3 weeks later, Selene officially filed a statement against Victor after finally agreeing to speak with an attorney. My mother moved out of their house shortly after that. And the wedding. It still happened. Just smaller. No giant reception, no extended family pretending everything was normal. only the people who actually stood by me. Right before the ceremony started, Daniel took my hand and said quietly, "You spent years carrying secrets that weren't yours." I looked at him, and now. He smiled gently, "Now you get to stop." Later that night, before we left the venue, I opened my purse one last time and pulled out a folded copy of the DNA report. The paper that nearly destroyed my life. I stared at it for a second, then dropped it into the trash and walked away.